You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wood.
And I'm Jennifer Connor.
From Equestrian Businesswomen, and you're listening to Equestrian B2B, the podcast that brings together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and equestrians for conversations about how they build and sustain a successful business.
On today's show, we speak with Christa Myers of Equestrian Entrepreneur about how to create a stable profit for your business, financial health strategies, and opening up about finances.
Christa Myers is the founder of Equestrian Entrepreneur. Since its conception in 2020, Equestrian Entrepreneur has helped over 250 equestrian business owners get back on course with their financial operations and goal to create stable profit. The clients they work with are from every part of the equine industry, such as farriers, racing programs, riders, boarding facilities, body workers, and more. What they all have in common is the desire to understand and change the course of their financial story.
A horse girl at heart and a bookkeeper, business analyst, and strategist by profession, Christa is a believer in the power of turning dreams into reality. When not immersed in analyzing financial reports or mentoring fellow equestrian entrepreneurs, you'll find her in the barn with her 7-year-old Dark Bay OTTB mare, or traveling North America for views of wildflowers, mountains, horses, and searching for the best vanilla latte.
Hi, Christa. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to talk to you about your business and everything that you do to help other equestrian businesswomen. So thanks for being here.
Hi, Jen. Thank you for having me. I am quite excited to be on here and talking to you both and having this conversation.
Yeah. So kind of just starting out, can you talk about what your experience and maybe education is in bookkeeping and finance that gave you the confidence to start your own company?
Absolutely. So we're actually going to start the story in my teens. I was raised by a trucker, and part of that was being an employee for him. So we were doing bookkeeping for him from a very young age. And that did very much start with the plastic bags and the receipts going there and sorting from that. So we could have the bookkeeping ready for his accountant. And then I went into business when I was in university at Brock University and took some accounting classes in there. At that point, I hated money, hated math. At that point, I was a broke horse girl, in I think that was probably 19 to 20, or I guess 18 to 21. But took the courses because they're prerequisites. It wasn't until I was graduated from university, I was in my first big girl job where I was handling shipping medical machines, like multi-million-dollar medical machines all across the world. When I started to get into accounting and saw that I was actually good at it despite being terrible at math, and that two, when you do your job really well, you get more tasks put onto you, and that's how I discovered, I guess, more my love for, not even my skills for looking at numbers, getting the data into your books properly, and then pulling information out of that so we can use them to leverage your growth, to cut back your expenses, to keep you from going under. So then I transitioned from my first big girl job into my second under purchasing and continuing with accounting. And that's when the world shut down. And so I had just started back in college for business analysis because I loved being able to identify bottlenecks, inefficiencies, and with horses and money, that would come in very handy when I started my business in 2021. So it was the education and experience of growing up, as well as university, as well as like that in-person hands-on experience when it comes to bookkeeping. So that gave me the confidence to start it. And I didn't start it as an equestrian bookkeeping firm. I said, hey, I'm at rock bottom, guys, so I'm starting a business. And what happened was everyone from my past was reaching out. horse people, previous coaches asking for help. And at that point, I was out of the equestrian industry, out of the sport. I was burnt out and broken. And then the horse people and the horses were calling me home through there. So it's really what gave me that confidence. And now 3 years later, we are a team of myself and 2 other bookkeepers.
Oh, nice. And how did you kind of make that leap into saying, I'm going to be a business owner?
It was after a year working with one of my best friends. She had graduated from chiropractic school and she was opening up her own equine chiropractic practice. And then I said I would help her once she got out of school. So we put the foundations on, we got her registered, we got her somewhat of a bookkeeping routine at that point. And then I really helped her grow her business. And at the end of the year, I was helping her as well as a photography friend. And they both went, I think it might be time to start your own business because you're helping us a lot. And that is what really gave me that push to open it myself.
That's great.
I was just having this conversation with somebody recently about where I am in my life. And I was like, oh man, so often I wish I had become interested or engaged in business and learning business practices much earlier, or, the things that I'm interested in now. I wish I was 20 years old and doing it. But both of us have realized that a lot of times all that experience that you have from when you're younger is what sets you up to be successful for what you have now. And, in my job, I actually feel a lot like I probably wouldn't be as good at it as I am if I didn't have all the experience at the farms and hands-on and the knowledge that I gained over my life. So I completely understand where all of that comes in. It's nice to know that you had some friends to give you a push into the next step.
Absolutely. And I grew up in the barn, it was after 2 years of summer camp, my grandma dragged me to the local barn and just put me in front of everyone until someone was like, yes, I will take her as a volunteer, drop her off next weekend. And that's where I learned that grittiness of horse girl and just, if you want it, go and make it happen. And I know it's not as simple as saying that, but making those steps to just making it happen. And that's been my approach to business. I'm not going to put something out there that's not valuable, that's not helpful to people, but I'm not going to wait on something to make it perfect and then release it to the world.
And you have 2 employees. So when did you make the decision to expand that way?
Yeah, so the team members are contractors instead of employees so that they can kind of set their own pace. They're 2 equestrians as well, Madison and Chrissy, and I brought them on this year. So Madison is out in the prairies in Canada, and she does bail racing and has her own thoroughbred syndication program, and schooling behind her for agriculture and business. And then Chrissy is in New York, but currently in Ocala, so jealous of that. She has a master's of accountancy and works in the pharmaceutical world for accounting, financial analysis, actually. So I brought those 2 wonderful ladies on this year so that I could continue bringing on more bookkeeping clients, and manage more of and this is what you're bookkeeping, this is what we can do with it. And Chrissy and Madison manage the day-to-day, get the reports ready, and then, of course, use that money from their contracting to fund their own horse girl dreams as well.
I like that you keep it in the equine industry. I feel like this is such a taboo subject for so many people in the equine industry. They just don't want to talk about it. They like to stick their heads in the sand. And so how do you think we can get more people talking about it, more engaged in actually looking at their finances and having a reality of what's going on?
That is such a good question. Okay, so I think the obvious answer to that is to continue having these conversations, whether it is on a podcast or in private. I used to be standing ringside and you would hear about money in horses and with equestrians, but it was through those jokes of how awkward laughter of disguising how much struggle and pain they're going through. And so instead, what I've been doing is hosting network events or putting on virtual network events as well, and opening a space for these conversations to be had where there is no shame, or we take away that shame and address it, so that we can talk about money and then move forward with it. But right now, we've prescribed to this broke horse girl narrative. And yes, horses are expensive, and we buy them lots of things that we feel like we need to. And we do work our damn butts off to do this. But we can continue to move in a way of stability and sustainability, as opposed to horse girls wondering how they're paying their next meal or their next month's rent. So overall, I think the answer to your question is to continue having these conversations, and holding space for things other than just really awkward jokes on our financial situations.
Do you have good attendance at your networking events in that area?
Yeah, so I've held one in person. This time last year, I was gearing up for an in-person retreat that I co-hosted in Florida with. And that was a really incredible time, because I think that was 10 equestrian entrepreneurs throughout North America. And that really started that conversation. And then I was able to continue that up here in Ontario, Canada. We had a network event in June, and that was my first one. And we sold it out at 30 people. And, we networked throughout it. And then at the end, we sat down and had a roundtable discussion. So I started with some questions to kind of prompt, answer my own to show, hi, I might be this horse money lady, but I too have struggled, and where I am is because of my past. And then really had those great conversations where people could open up. And I will be hosting a couple more of those this year.
That's really good. I'm very interested in that, and to know what the attendance is, and to see if people are going to start to get a little more comfortable with talking about finances. I really think it's one thing that we really need to make changes in the equine industry. So what do you think some of the biggest changes that need to be made in relation to finances are?
Ooh, I think the very first one is just that very bottom level of being aware of your finances. The majority of clients that come to me, the most common piece is that shame, negative emotions to money. But then that second one is they haven't touched it. They haven't looked at it. They haven't started sorting through it because of that emotional side of it. But when we do start diving into it, organizing it, that is where we can then actually change their course. One example of this is I started working with a local eventing lesson sales barn about 2 years ago. And at that point, we weren't really touching our finances. We had someone doing our year-end accounting by just pulling receipts and putting it together. But after a year of working together, she was able to make a huge dent in her debt to her income tax, to the point that she paid it off. She's about to be on track to pay off her sales tax. And we're going to end the year this year. So our second year working together, her second year of really turning finances around, and she will have savings in the bank, debt paid down. She'll probably have a new horse underway. So that's a part of our plan as well for her riding. So being aware really makes that situation start to change, where as opposed to being hi, money is really scary, I'm going to push it off, start to connect with it. And that allows you to then begin that change. Otherwise, how do we change anything if we're not on the horse, right? Or if we're not doing things in the ring or in the barn? The same thing with entering the barn is the way to progress as an equestrian. Entering your books is the way to progress as an equestrian entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think that first step is the big scary one. And then do you find that most people, once they get into it and break it down, feel like it's less intimidating, and that they're able to, put the emotion aside and be able to work through it more?
Absolutely, because once you walk through that emotion, then it's process and tasks. And so we set up a system for you. We then support how to use that because QuickBooks Online is incredible, guys, but unless you know how to use it, it's like going expecting you to jump on your first lesson. And then it's just, we're not walking through the emotions in that big, scary piece anymore. It's, hi, I step in and I update my bookkeeping. I take photos of my receipts. I do X, Y, and Z, as opposed to being like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm just going to not do anything because what?
Right. And what is your strategy to check the financial health of a business? How do you work with people in that starting point?
Okay, so I like this question. So I do 3 main areas of like a health check-in. And that will, one, be your financial reports. So ideally we have bookkeeping reports. If not, our first piece is to organize and get those reports available. So we're looking in at your profit and loss. And we're identifying how much we're bringing in, where is your money coming in from? Because being able to tell if it comes from boarding, lessons, sales, if that is your type of business, or, what products are actually selling and creating profit, and following that all the way down to see if we are breaking even, if we are making a profit. And then I also check your actual bank accounts, because profit on a report does not mean profit in your bank account, because our cash flow, so actual money coming into our bank and actual money leaving our bank, is different than us saying we made a sales of X amount of money this month. So we check your financial reports, we check your bank accounts, and then I always like to do a financial mindset check-in where we are seeing, like, how is your mental health on the side of finances? Is your sleep improving? Are we feeling less stressed around there? When I say money or ask you about your bookkeeping, or do you stop breathing still? What's happening on that side of things? Because a successful equestrian entrepreneur is one that has money in the bank, yes, but one that is also happy and healthy. So those are the 3 main areas where we're looking for. At this point, the majority of my clients, we are looking at breaking even and profiting. And that has been our focus, especially with this financial or this economic situation we are in currently, and that we're going to continue probably experiencing till the end of this year, at minimum, is making sure that we have enough money in the bank to cover these bills, but also know that we can have enough money in the bank to afford ourselves some opportunities to grow our business during this recession.
Yeah, those are really great points. I love that you address how people are feeling, not just, the basic numbers of what they're doing in their business. So, yeah, I mean, anybody can go and use QuickBooks, but if it's still keeping you up at night, then having help with that would be a great asset.
And I think putting like the systems in place to kind of like set it and forget it is helpful, because we get wrapped up in it so much. And a lot of times we're looking too far out and not looking at, okay, what is the process that's going to set this up to make it easy for me so I can forget about it and I'm not worried about it all the time and constantly dwelling on it. And I think that it's not just in finances. I think that's in any kind of habit. And I do think that mindset is an important factor in all of it.
I think addressing it and being able to, like you said, move beyond that point of where you can let it go by itself and not be, but that you're also still aware of everything at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't mean forget it like you don't ever think about it. I certainly know that it's there, but I've been listening to some different podcasts about various topics like this, and them saying that putting in the systems should help you ease your mind while you're going through it.
Part of this, so when I'm walking a client through, ideally we start with the understanding. So let's get the bookkeeping basics and what we need to do for compliance, and understand that, hi guys, we absolutely do need invoices for every service or every product that we sell. It's not just enough to say we sold $800 worth of products in January. And then from there, let's go set up your QuickBooks Online. Let's get an actual software system in place and then streamline it, because there's so much that can be automated, but then still have that human touch in there to make sure that the process and the process cycle is being completed.
Do you find people being guarded when you first start working with them and wanting to keep that information to themselves?
Absolutely. So I always ask for my clients to bring a cup of coffee, a cup of tea to their first meeting. And I start, and I'll just say, casual conversation, literally as we are talking today, back and forth, and I will pick out pieces. I'll ask questions. I literally tell them, I am poking and prodding you today. And so I'm going to ask these questions, answer them as you feel. And I will pick up pieces, whether someone hesitates or the tone of their voice changes. And I will take notes. I always take notes. And I will go back and dive deeper into their pieces, once they feel willing and able to. I'm never someone, even as a person, as a friend, I'm not someone who's going to, you tell me something, I'm going to be like, tell me more. I'm just going to stay here, hold this space for you. And what you're willing to share with me, please do. And then, of course, I do ask what I need to know. And we take it away from it being shameful. Before I started this business a year before, I was in a lot of short-term debt. My credit card and my checking was a constant rotation, revolving door of money going in and out. So I like to meet the equestrian entrepreneur where they are at, the same way that we, ride the horse that's under us the day that we are riding that horse.
And from that conversation, are you able to develop a clear picture of what their finances look like, or do you have to dive in a little deeper?
Only if they have a clear understanding. So, this is where I'll ask about their revenue. I'll ask about their financial pain points, their dreams, and what's stopping them. Because if you start to ask about their dreams and the good, happy pieces, oh, well, what is holding you back on that? Money, finances, limited resources, time, and then get into a conversation like that. So it's not like you're sitting down in a gray room on a chair talking to, a stereotypical financial advisor or a banker. We all get really scared thinking about going into a bank account. I am a horse girl who was in a very bad financial position and had to change that in order to go back after my dreams. And I was a horse girl that had to choose between university and a working student position, because I was told my horses would always be there. And I learned a very painful and hard way that horses won't always be there. And I started this business and the purpose of changing how we operate in the horse world, so that, a horse girl and equestrian can choose both passion and profit and not be told, hey, you got to go to university because there's no money in horses.
Do you think that there's a place for a bookkeeper in, say, a groom's life, or somebody who's not actually running a business?
Okay. Yes, I think there could be room for a bookkeeper depending on, the capacity that they run at, their lifestyle as well. What I have created is a program called CECO Mentorship, which brings in part-time bookkeeper, part-time business coach, where you can sit down with me on a quarterly basis and we go over your bookkeeping. So any open questions you have in your QuickBooks, we go and finish. So your bookkeeping's up to date, and then we can then pull those financial reports and grow your business from that standpoint. Work on your sales, messaging, and offers, and psychology and process. But first, make sure that financial foundation of bookkeeping is there. So I'm not sure if a full-time bookkeeper is plausible for a lot of grooms, but I'm sure that there is some very busy ones that could be supported from the side of time and profitability with them. But if not, that part-time bookkeeper side, I created that program with the idea that not every equestrian entrepreneur is going to need a bookkeeper at full service.
It's funny that, the way we're talking about it is similar to a conversation we've had with people about sales and how much psychology is a part of sales. And you don't think of it as being a part of, bookkeeping or financial advising or, helping people with their business, but it truly is. And being there to listen and support and help people through the process, I think is as much about psychology as it is, the basics of the math.
When I got into this business, I didn't think bookkeeping was going to be the core. I thought I was going to be teaching on it. It would be some recurring revenue there. But I didn't believe that was what I was going to be fully doing, because I really was just finishing up school of business analysis and was working on that. But I noticed I couldn't actually make a change in a business unless I was taking care of that money. So I can make bigger changes, quicker changes if I am first and always focusing on that profit, on that money, because money goes through every single part of your business. So we better make sure that you got a good foundation, that it supports you throughout all your other departments and areas of your business.
How many clients do you service now?
Throughout Canada and the US, we have about 23 bookkeeping clients. We just had a few offboarded at the end of 23. And then I have another 20 mentorship clients. So that bookkeeping mentorship program I was just talking about. So we normally average around 50 clients between the mentorship and the bookkeeping. And then I do offer one-off consults. So every once in a while we'll have a new face pop in as well.
Do you see a difference between your Canadian clients and the US clients?
I was just going to ask that.
Yes. And I'm Canadian, so this is always, it's not odd to talk about, but it's very outrospective, I guess. The way we handle and treat money up here in Canada is very scarce mentality, and we also take a longer process of departing with our money. And that is just a general overall. Also doesn't help that we've been in a really bad financial situation for the last couple of years, and it's just continuing to feel, heavier and heavier. But I have more American clients than I do Canadian at this point. They are more open to outsourcing the ability to work it into their budget. Like on average, my bookkeeping service is $300 per month. And, for some, that's a group lesson or, 3 bodywork sessions or a few products. And they are able to, their mindset to be able to outsource, not just justify, but then also leverage that they don't have to do their bookkeeping and can make more money. That mindset seems very more abundant in Americans than it does Canadians. And also the market size in the US as opposed to Canada is just drastic, right? So definitely massive, well, not a massive, but a big difference between the Canadians and the Americans.
And is there a difference financially or anything technically that you have to do between Canada and the US?
Not necessarily. From the side of opening a business, keeping it going, completing our taxes. Yes, there is some mild differences, but overall the process is pretty much the same. And then the profitability between the two countries. Yes, the US normally does have more revenue, but that doesn't necessarily always mean they have more profit on their businesses. But I do always love side of America, because you guys have the LLCs, the S Corps, there's more business structures and opportunities in the US and up here in Canada. I also find that the support that you get from both the government and the economy and citizens is a lot different in the US as opposed to in Canada as well.
And I have a question about, you've talked about the economy a couple of times. Do you think there are things that people need to be doing right now to get their bookkeeping in line, or in terms of money for the economy as it is, or where it's headed?
This has been a topic I've not avoided fully on purpose, but I've been very careful about what I've been saying and what kind of information I put out there, because, we hear economy, we hear recession, we get scared. And rightfully so. Like, up here in Canada, I saw a box of cereal for $10 the other day. And so it's really drastic on the side of affordability just on life. And then you add horses on top of that. What businesses should be doing is what they should be doing any other time of an economy, an economic cycle, is doing their bookkeeping, being aware of their finances, collecting on their AR, making sure they have a good profit plan to be able to pay their bills on time. But that I never want to be talking about the economy and, right now, that R word, recession, as a scary part, because businesses can leverage opportunities throughout recessions and come out way better and bigger, if bigger is what they even want at the end of a recession. I would be very careful about where you are putting your money right now, and making sure that if you are able to, put expenses in the side, that we can go to a different supplier and find the same thing for a better price. That we are tracking, if we are running a lesson barn, that we know that each horse is working and what their expenses are, because QuickBooks can really help you with that. I say right now, your best bet about this is information and data to be able to know where you are financially and then be able to change that. But also being able to have your bookkeeping available so that if you do need funding, or if you're looking for funding, you can then go and get that without that being not an option. Because if you haven't filed your taxes in 7 years, you haven't done your bookkeeping ever, going and asking for support and help just isn't going to be realistic, and it's not going to be the answer you want it to be.
Yeah, we've had that conversation before with another guest who had said there's been parts where she's had to say to somebody, we can't do it right now, but we need to have a plan. And then in a year from now, we can relook at it, if you stuck to the plan. So it's probably better to have that in place before you go in.
Absolutely. And then from, the traditional standpoint of an equestrian business where we're in a barn, everyone right now is, we want to make progress in our business, but at the very minimum, we need to be able to keep your business alive. That is my goal and job for 2024 is, one, making sure that I can find opportunities for my clients to grow in this economy, but overall keeping them alive so that they can grow after, is my biggest job this year.
And do you work with more than just riding barns? Do you have retail businesses that you work with?
We work with a vast variety of equestrian entrepreneurs, which keeps my brain so happy. We'll have equine products like blankets. We have a couple equestrian clothing stores, body workers. We have, the traditional teachers. Then you'll have your riding coaches and sales programs. A lot of eventing riders have been who we've been working with, because you're trying to chase these big giant goals, but you need some big giant funding behind you to support and fund that to happen. And then we even have clients on the side of more holistic, training, positivity, education. So it is a very big change to clients, as well as we also have farriers. I just brought on a racing program client. So there is a large amount, and I always love working with a diverse amount so that we can see what was also happening in the economy and horses overall.
The Equestrian Businesswomen Networking Brunch is back in Wellington for 2024 on January 21st. Bigger and better than ever, attendees can expect a keynote speaker, a panel discussion with experts in the industry, and more ways to learn about yourself, your business, and how other equestrian businesswomen can become your support group.
The EQBW Networking Brunch offers a unique opportunity for equestrian businesswomen from any type of business to meet, mingle, talk, and listen with incredible brunch food, champagne, and an ice cream bar. Mark your calendar and join us on January 21st, 2024. Buy your ticket today at eqbusinesswomen.com. When you're looking at bookkeeping and how to keep track of things, and you said like invoice for everything, how do you manage when clients barter for things, and how does that work on the balance sheet?
Yes. How it should work is that a client will create a invoice in their QuickBooks, and then we're able to apply a credit memo to that invoice for whatever amount of work. So let's say a client has a training invoice for $550 for the month, and then their clients power washed their barn, and that was valued at $400 a month. We would apply that credit memo, and they would pay the difference of that invoice to the business there. So that is how it should be done.
Yeah, I think in this industry, a lot of things happen where they just don't keep track of it, or they consider it a one-for-one trade when it probably isn't. You know, how much time and effort and money goes into, say, taking care of a lesson horse and you giving lessons for free to someone who's doing something for you that only takes them, a couple of hours is not an equal trade. So I think that's really something for people to recognize when they do barter things, is that they're valuing themselves correctly.
So I really love this because I was just talking about this to myself. So I guess I was thinking about it, is that knowing, like, if we want to know the true cost of running an equestrian business, an equine business in the horse world, how can we expect ourselves to actually know that if we have no idea of the expenses? Because and the revenue that we're making, because we're not capturing these bartering pieces, we're not paying these working students, we're not doing these different pieces, is how do we actually turn this ship around if we don't know what is on the ship?
Yeah. Or what's coming on and leaving the ship.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think of so many people who barter, rides for horses places, and, not having the true cost of that to reflect in their books. I would also think that at some point, those would be helpful to have in there if you are going to look for a loan, if you are trying to see a full picture of what your business is. Leaving that kind of stuff off doesn't really show your full picture, like you said, and we really need to see that so that you know the value of your business. And are you getting a good trade? Like, is shipping 3 horses for a person who's only shipping 1 for you, is that really a fair trade?
Mm-hmm. And that, I think, ties into the first question of talking about money and talking about finances. Sorry, the second question, and how people aren't comfortable talking about money. Like, they'll just say, oh yeah, I'll do that for you. No problem. We can trade it. They don't want to say, I'm sorry, I'm worth more than you, or what I'm doing is worth more than what you're doing for me. That's an uncomfortable conversation to have. At least it would be for me to say, whatever, I have 20 years of experience in this industry, and everything that goes into that in writing a press release for you is worth more than what you were doing for me. So I would think some people have difficulty with that.
So I've learned a couple of lessons in business in my 3 years. And then one is that I've tried bartering a few times with different people, contracts in place, all the right things that should be there. And that, to me, I am at the point where I'm just going to pay people, hi, what's your that service you want? Please let me pay for it. And if you want a service from me from some point, just pay for it. And I'm someone who loves to encourage the money I make to be kept in the equestrian industry and spent throughout it. But I am just going to send you my money, you send me mine. And if you want to work with me, as opposed to also feeling like someone comes up to you and offers a bartering, that you should do that from a value of economic side of things, as opposed to, one, do you actually want the service and is it going to help your business?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I think people value things differently in their mind too. And that's where it can get you into trouble. I remember distinctly one time my husband borrowed somebody's horse trailer, used it, like they had, I don't know, maybe half a tank of gas or something. So he used it and he replaced the gas, but he replaced the gas that he used. And she was so mad at him for not filling up her truck after, like, all the way after she had borrowed it. Meanwhile, this is somebody who my husband had been working back and forth with and bartering rides here and there. And it just happened that she didn't need something. So he just borrowed the trailer. And he was really upset that she was so mad at him for not filling up the trailer. He's like, I left it exactly the way I found it, basically. And she was expecting more. And so I think that is where you run into trouble, where you just, value it one way in your mind and people value it another in theirs.
And expectations are different on either side.
Yeah, absolutely.
I find it also starts like a tick for tack mentality as well.
Right.
And like as you were saying, that tick for tack might be of different value to each of us. And in a world where friendships and business partnerships are already intertwined and messy enough, keeping that part where, hi, if you're my friend and you're also my client or a business colleague, I don't have to have that extra weight of us bartering services, or if we haven't exchanged things back properly, on my shoulders as well.
This also comes back to us constantly reiterating the fact that you need to have contracts in place with people.
Yes.
I think that's where people run into so many problems. And I just recently had a friend who had some major issues of leaving a job, been there for a long time. Everything was like verbally agreed on and nothing in writing. And fortunately, she's on the upside of it, but it was a little bit iffy there for a while because, like she said, you never think that you're going to leave a place. And I'm like, you always have to be prepared for that, though.
Yeah.
And also like contracts that are legally drafted, whether they're a template from a lawyer or made for you from a lawyer, as opposed to, putting it on from Google. That extra money that investing in the contracts is money. But what it protects for you is worth that amount, and it actually will hold up, as opposed to the piece you put together, your client kind of signed, kind of didn't, and having to worry about that. So from what I've learned in investing in those contracts, there's pieces in there that cover your butt that I can't even imagine, because I'm not a bookkeeper, or I'm not a lawyer, I'm a bookkeeper. And so I shouldn't have to know or worry about those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Right. And talking about, the difference between a bookkeeper and like a CPA or accountant, can you go over the general differences?
Yes. So your CPA is your chartered professional accountant. They went through university schooling, hours of work experience in order to get a designation. And they are the accountants that you want for your tax filing, for creating your incorporations, perhaps for working on those bigger, you want someone for really high level funding. CPAs, accountants, those are your go-tos, especially for filing. I am someone who does not mess around with that. On the side of filing. And those are your accounting tasks. You'll also see an abundance of businesses, especially in our space, who are calling themselves something accounting. And what they actually are is something bookkeeping with an accounting name, because they don't do the tasks of an accountant. But also, if you are listening and you are an accountant, please let me know, because I have a bunch of referrals for that side of things. But where bookkeeper comes into place is your everyday tasks. We are recording your everyday financial story, making sure you are compliant with it. There is a bookkeeping cycle where, we take care of your bookkeeping month to month. We reconcile, meaning we make it match what your bank statements are. We make it true. We make it real. And then your accountant will come in, whether it's for sales tax, if you need that support, or income tax, or your incorporation or LLC obligations. That is the side of accounting. Whereas bookkeeping, I am more data entry. Yes, I am totally capable of analyzing and pulling from those financial reports, but that's more so from experience and further education than it is necessarily from a bookkeeping role. But that is really the difference between accountant, CPA, and bookkeeper.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's important for people to realize the difference. And, they may need one or the other at various times.
I've been trying to get them into the routine of having an accountant and a bookkeeper because, I come through here all throughout the year and keep your books updated. But at the end of the year, if you don't have an accountant, we're just kind of not filing and continuing procrastination.
How often do you work with a CPA?
Pretty darn often. At this point, I think I only have a couple more clients to find an accountant for. But especially right now, I'm dealing with accountants on a daily basis to get out your 1099s, to get out your T4s, all these different pieces for year end. But I really do love to have an accountant with every client we bring on.
Yeah. Do you find it helpful if the accountant is versed in equine?
Oh, helpful. Yes, because I want them to always be looking for tax strategies I'm not aware of, and help on that side of things, because I really do lean on accountants on the side of tax strategy, and also really detailed compliance. So having that, I do believe, adds that extra layer of tax protection as well as strategy. I don't necessarily think it is same thing with bookkeeping. I don't think it is a do or die to have an equestrian accountant and equestrian bookkeeper. I think it's really helpful from the side of, if you don't have your stuff together, I can go in and I know, you go to a feed store, I know what that can go for, or, shavings, where that goes for in your chart of accounts for organization. But expenses, cost for goods, incomes, the terms are all the same when it comes to accountants or bookkeepers. Where the terminology really changes is from the client. And so we're giving an experience for equestrian entrepreneurs for equestrian bookkeeping, because they don't need to explain all these pieces to us. They don't need to justify that what they are doing is actually a business because it's generating income. And we can also help with the language and differences between their accountant and themselves if their accountant isn't horsey. So to answer, I don't think it is an absolute requirement to have a horsey bookkeeper or accountant. I do think, of course, it is nice. And as someone who likes to keep money within the economy of horses, that is also keeping it, but it is not a do or die.
Yeah, I have an accountant who's versed in horses, and it has helped me out tremendously, and my husband as well. There is so much that you don't have to explain to them that they get, which is nice.
And how long does it typically take for your clients to change their finances if things are, in a less than ideal situation?
Yeah. So I was thinking of how to answer this really well. And I'm going to take the average. On average, it takes us 3 months of working with me to consistently change your habits for your finances. So for your financial management and your mindset, but that doesn't necessarily mean absolute changes in your bank account yet. Right. And so that 3 months for habit changes, or for us to make a big dent in your bookkeeping and get it caught up, make a process, a systems in there for you. But I would say it's going to take probably 6 to 12 months of that habits continuing. And allowing that money to, pay off the debt, collect into your savings account. It does take a little bit of a while, but 3 months on average is when we start to change those habits of your money management and mindset.
Should people be looking at their bookkeeping and all of that every day? Or how often do you think people should be checking in? Because we've had somebody say on this podcast before, like, you need to know every day where your finances are, which is so overwhelming to me that I couldn't imagine. So I just on the bookkeeping side of things, like, what do you recommend?
Yeah. I try to keep the overwhelm down. Or else it does not happen.
Habits don't change when you're overwhelmed. You rely on what you've always done.
Yeah.
And what's
Right.
comfortable.
And we, some of us work with horses, some of us don't. I always say there's money making with horses and money making in horses. But for that, absolutely, probably not once a day. I do say so there's an ideal world and then there's reality. In an ideal world, I would love you looking at your bookkeeping once a week. So you schedule a meeting and have that. But in a reality, at minimum, you should be doing once a month. So you can go in, update your bookkeeping, remind your clients to pay you, send your your payments to your own vendors, and also see what your financial system is. So at minimum, once per month, ideally once per week. And these week pieces can be chunked down. Hi, week 1, I'm only going to update invoice payments. Week 2, I'm only going to do these pieces, or I'm only going to give myself 30 minutes. And in that, I can do any of these tasks. And then I walk away from my bookkeeping, or I walk away from my money for that day. But make it realistic. Do things that you can actually achieve, and then put it into your phone as a reminder, a scheduled event, or else it just doesn't happen. When I started my business, I used to, chuckle about having to live out of a calendar. And now if it's not in my calendar, it literally does not happen.
Yeah, same.
Yep, absolutely. I'm the same way.
I like that idea, though, of making it a meeting time for yourself every week, or because time gets away from you so fast, and there's so many other things going on that pull your attention, especially if you're a business owner. So yeah, schedule it and set the habit of meeting yourself and getting it done.
Yeah, just like you would a lesson if you're at a lesson barn, right? You put it right in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This next question is a little bit tricky, and I'm going to kind of walk you through the thought process I was having when I was thinking about it. Because what I want to know is if you've ever had a client that you recognize isn't qualified to be at the level that they're trying to be at, and what you have to do if they aren't qualified, maybe kind of bringing back to reality. And I was thinking about when you were talking about having some eventers as your clients, and if they have aspirations that are much higher than what they're actually qualified to go and do, how do you deal with that?
Okay. And I've sat on this question too. I thought it was a very good question. And how to answer this. So I'm going to answer it in a couple ways, I think. Have I had a client that wasn't qualified to run their business at the level that they thought or that they were? I'm going to say yes, but more so on the side of qualified for capacity. Is I have a bunch of clients that would run their business at a capacity well beyond what they're qualified, what they're capable of doing. And what we've had to do with that is again, everything starts with me, a really vulnerable, honest conversation. We go over their business, finances, operations, failures, successes. I put my business analysis hat on for the conversation. I'm pulling those pieces, like I said. But when it comes to qualifications, oh boy, I see this more on the side of body workers than I do on the side of eventers. And this is in absolute general here, but with bodywork specifically, you get in it because you want to help horses, whether it's with massage or PEMF or Beamer or all these other modalities. And you take a weekend course and then go on out with it. And I think that bodywork in itself, one, this is kind of opinion, but also totally factual, is you are going and helping horses, but with those machines and with your hands, you can do harm. And as someone who from the get-go has been working with body workers, saddle fitters, farriers, I've had my eyes really, really open to the reality of our horses in sport and also not in our sport, in the industry in whole. And I absolutely have had to have the conversations of, should we be offering at this level or this service, or could we go for more education? And also here's some great, how can I help you get that education? Who can I refer you to? Who can I have you have a conversation with who's a body worker that's been in the industry for 10, 20 years, so that you as a newbie yeah, that is true as well. Have a conversation with someone who has that experience. But then also, we never want to start a business out and not give value. And if you are a body worker or you are anything in this industry, horse people have the ability to sniff BS out. And I think there's a difference between having the qualifications for your business and being qualified for your business. As we're talking about CPA and bookkeeper, as a bookkeeper, you do not have to have qualifications. And if you have the education and experience, I don't believe that it makes a difference in the service that you're providing if you are providing the right, proper service. However, if you are going to be a bookkeeper and not provide the right service or the right value, then you're not qualified and you also don't have the qualifications. So I think capacity, qualifications, and being qualified are very different in there. But at the end of the day, if you are not qualified for running your business at any capacity, your finances are going to reflect it. Yourself, you are going to feel it because it's going to feel misaligned. You're going to have that imposter syndrome because of where you are and where you're projecting you are is very different. And you're having to fill that gap with maybe some fancy marketing, maybe with some false confidence. And I'm someone who I like to offer my services, but I also like to get my confidence from lived experience. And so education and building that experience out from there adds on to that qualification piece. But yeah, to answer your question here is, yes, I've had clients who, whether it was qualifications or capacity, weren't able to run their business at that level. But they knew it because they were reaching out to me with some type of financial pain point. Maybe they just didn't know the exact answer. And it's not always, hey, we're stepping your business back forever. We're stepping your business back so that you can get the profit there, so that you can get the education there or the systems in place, and then move forward to there. One thing I think equestrians are great at is learning. Another thing I think we're great at is lifelong learning. But sometimes we lack the patience in getting to those spots. And that is when we can get in over our heads.
No, I think that's a good answer. The capacity part, I find really interesting because most people kind of don't realize they're in under their heads from a capacity standpoint until it's like way far gone and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But having somebody who's looking at the financial reports and saying, you might need to step it back a bit because you're overextending yourself and you're not getting, the money isn't coming in for the hours that you're putting out, is something truly helpful for a business owner to have.
Yeah, basically you're not getting an ROI.
Right.
And it's nice to have somebody tell you that.
Right.
One piece I will add on there is that bigger doesn't always mean better.
Sure.
And definitely from that capacity qualification side of things is, you might start trying, this is one piece I just said, is you cannot outgrow or outscale the negative aspects of your business. And that means not making money. So if you just scale up your business and you're expecting that to fix your profitability side of things, it will actually normally put you further into the red. So that is one piece there as well.
Well, I look at it at sales. We look at it. A lot of sales models are you get 80% of your revenue from 20% of your clients.
Right. Yeah. And usually, what I've always heard is the 80% of the clients that are providing 20% of the revenue are also the biggest pains in the butt to deal with. The ones who are giving you less money are usually harder to deal with. So
that is absolutely true.
Well, Christa, I think this was a really fun and informative discussion. And thank you so much for coming on today. And at the end of each episode, we ask the same 4 questions to each guest, and Connor starts with the first.
What is one action that women can take to make a big difference in their lives?
A simple one is reading some financial mindset books to help improve their money mindset and management skills.
Ooh, that's good.
You have a recommendation of your favorite?
Ooh, I do. Okay. It is called Rich as Buck, but replace the B with an F. It is written by Amanda Francis, and it just talks about so much about money and women and how we never ask for, what we are valued at, what we are worth, how we don't think we should be wealthy or rich or all these pieces. It is my first book I read on financial mindset, money mindset, and is still it was still my top recommendation.
Awesome. Cool. And what's the best habit that keeps you motivated personally?
My best habit is money meetings. So every Monday I start with a money meeting, and it is just a 45-minute meeting with myself that I was talking about. I update my bookkeeping. I open up all my bank accounts, look at the situations they're in, see what this week is going to bring, and then it sets me up for the entire week ahead.
That's great.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite horse movie?
Ooh, I was thinking about this. Not horse movie, but horse show. And that would be Heartland.
Okay.
You had to go with the Canadian one. And who would you recommend to be a future guest on this podcast?
Ooh, I was thinking on this as well. And I was thinking Lucy from Sapphire Sport Horses. She is a dressage coach and rider, as well as a mom who is just a great example of equestrian entrepreneurship and motherhood.
Awesome.
That's great.
Well, thanks again, Christa. We enjoyed talking with you and learning more. And there's some really great information in there.
Thank you for having me. And I love the conversations like these. I was happy to have them with both of you.
I thought that was a really useful conversation with Christa. As we like to have from our guests is really concrete tips and information that people can take away. And I thought she was really forthright about everything. And what we talked about of people needing to be more open about their finances. And I thought she had a lot of helpful information.
Yeah, she really gave us some good tips. I think that she made it seem very comfortable to be able to talk about your finances, which is what I really like, because I think so many people struggle with talking about finances because they're not comfortable with it. And she has really embraced it and become comfortable. And I feel like she probably makes her clients very comfortable in pulling out the information that she needs in order to analyze everything. So I really enjoyed listening to her talk, and she made me feel comfortable about a topic that is pretty traditionally uncomfortable.
For sure. one point that I laughed at, that I thought was interesting was comparing Canadians and Americans.
Yes.
And she talked about like the Americans understanding that they need to, give up their time or, give up giving a lesson or doing a session in order to give that time to her
Yes.
and to get their financial records straight. Whereas the Canadians weren't as likely to do that. I thought that was interesting because I wouldn't have thought that either. But yeah, I liked her take on a lot of things.
Yeah, I liked her take a little bit on the economy as well and what you need to do to kind of prepare for it, because I think that's a super relevant topic right now. And I think that's in the back of a lot of people's minds. And, sometimes I feel like the equestrian people don't stay up on relevant topics like that.
No. Like, there's a war happening? What do you mean?
Right. Like we talked about it before, living in a silo, right? And not looking at what's going on outside that might actually affect what's going on in the business.
Right.
So I enjoyed her perspective of that. And I do feel like she was super honest about a lot of things too.
Mm-hmm.
As you'll find when she's talking, she kind of thinks about it for a second and might say, no, that actually is right. That's fact. Or that's absolutely where I feel like that let her guard down.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
For sure. It was a good talk. And I think it'll be cool to see her in person at the Equestrian Businesswomen Networking Brunch, which is coming up soon. So go buy your ticket if you haven't yet and join us in Wellington.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe pick Christa's brain if you're there.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for networking with her and so many other people at the brunch.
And on that note, we have another meeting to get to. So find the links to today's guest and the show notes at www.eqbusinesswomen.com. Equestrian B2B is out twice a month on the 1st and the 15th.
You can find out more at eqbusinesswomen.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Find Equestrian B2B wherever you get your podcasts and be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. You can have all 20 plus shows of the Horse Radio Network with you wherever you go with their free app for iPhone and Android. Go to your app store and search Horse Radio Network.
Now, go increase your financial health.